Welcome to another episode of Samadrita Talkshow. Today we have a guest who has made a significant mark in the world of music and nursing. She is a collaborative pianist, composer, producer, and also a nursing practitioner. She had started her musical journey at the age of 4, and then she completed BA majoring in music and French from Waterloo University. And then she completed her diploma in jazz and commercial music from Humber College, for which she was awarded the Governor General Award. She is an alumni of Toronto Mass Choir, which has been nominated and also won the Juno Awards. She has worked with eminent personalities and also has significant contributions in the musical shows, be it Color of Purple or Portia Cryptage, and most recently, the Toronto 2025 production of Disney's Lion King. She has made history on this Feb 2025, being the first Black woman who had conducted the Toronto musical The Lion King. She is also a nurse practitioner who has completed her bachelor's and master's in nursing. And also, she is the first Black woman to be the nursing student from McMaster University. Well, she has a lot to add to her introduction. Welcome to our show, none other than Joy Brown.
Thank you so much.
It's all our pleasure to have you in our show, who is just not a wonderful human being, but also a super talented woman.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
It's all our pleasure. So maybe if you can just let us know your journey into this music world.
So, as you said, I started playing piano at the age of 4. I was classically trained all the way through. I started when I was born in Montreal and continued my studies when we moved to Jamaica for a year before coming to Ontario and all the way through. And I completed my associate with the Royal Conservatory of Music in piano performance. So, music has always been a big part of my life. I started playing in a nursing home when I was 8 years old and playing in church since I was 9. So a lot of my informal music training came through that, and also with nursing because my mom would take me to the nursing homes every week, all the way up until my 3rd year of university. I was playing in the nursing home. But I learned to be flexible in my music. A lot of times people would come, special singers would come to the church, and I would have to pick up on what they were singing by ear. So I had a really strong ear. You know, all the way through I've been playing. And then when I graduated from Humber, I had the privilege of playing with the Toronto Mass Choir. Before that, we had gone, I was part of a missions group who would go to different countries. And so I was able to play in Honduras, and Bulgaria, and Romania, and just had a wide, rich experience in music, all different kinds. So classically and jazz trained.
Whoa, that's a long list of, I think, accomplishments. So, like you said, you have been born in Montreal and then shifted your base to Hamilton. So, do you see any significant change in terms of like the musical achievements or the growth out both in Montreal and in Ontario, maybe?
Well, I left Montreal when I was 4. Yeah. So I do have friends who are in that music scene. Montreal has a very rich music scene, culturally very creative there, and it continues to grow. So actually one of the associate musicians, the Lion King, he's from Montreal. And so it's just kind of nice to see how he's very much involved in the music scene there. And our violin viola double, she also has a quartet that they go to Montreal and play great. So Montreal definitely is a very hot spot for music. And then same thing in Toronto, but Brampton, shout out to Brampton, also has a lot of musicians coming out of Brampton, Black musicians, South Asian musicians. It's a hotbed for music and soccer and cricket. So, but yes, I think music has come a far way over the many years in Canada. And I think one of the things is that a lot of times Canadian musicians have had to leave in order to be recognized, whether it's to the States or internationally. And then when they become big internationally, then it's like Canada's like, oh, that's our Canadian. And they come back. I think of like Shania Twain, and I think of Alessia Cara and Shawn Mendes, like all of those people, even Justin Bieber, he like to the States and back, right? But I think we are becoming more appreciative of the diverse music now. Is there's still a long way to go, but I think more than just rock or folk or country, we're starting to respect different styles of music. Even there was I don't know if you know this, but this year at the Juniors there was a South Asian category this year.
Okay.
Yeah, which is huge. Is huge. So it's nice that we're starting to recognize different cultural influences and just the richness that it adds to Canadian music.
Yeah. I think your story tells definitely as, I think, one footstep towards making a mark in the global map. Because when you are recognized as a first Black woman across the globe, I think that's what encourages people to stay back in this country and create wonderful music.
For sure. It's funny because when Sean, who is the Sean Mays, he's the global music supervisor now for The Lion King, and he had actually discovered me when he had heard a recording from the Nathaniel Dett Chorale, and he had been asked at that time to be the music director for The Color Purple. And so that's how he found me. And just having that person in your corner, I played, it was just such a wonderful experience for me. It's the first time I had done a theater production. I said, oh, this is how the other half lives. And that was after years of wanting to do something with my music that just wasn't playing in church. I knew there was something out there, but I also knew how difficult it was.
Right.
And so, I had my nursing, and I love my nursing, but, it was basically music kept taking a back seat, but I had that taste of what it was like to play, and I knew I wanted to do more, but I didn't know how that could happen because it's very difficult to take up space in that world. Now that I'm inside, I understand why. Which I can go into a little bit more, but I understand why. So I think, and then he and another actor who was in The Color Purple, Howie, had been working on this opera about Portia White, who was the first Black Canadian opera singer to be internationally recognized. I didn't even know who she was, right? Okay. So there's so much in our history that we didn't know. And so he had been working on this libretto for 10 years, and Sean put the music to it. And so we had the honor of doing that show last year in June with the Canadian Opera Company. And then, Sean's calling me anywhere in your world. I was just literally saying to my friend at work how music and nursing have always been these two great forces in my life. And I was telling her how I had seen The Color Purple. Sorry, not The Color Purple, The Lion King, when it first came to Toronto. Back, I think it was before I actually married Del. So it was in 2000. And sitting there and thinking, wouldn't it be great to play in this one day? Never thought that would happen. And literally the next day I'm at work and I see this text message from Sean, and he's like, is there any way in your world you would want to play? So I was like, I knew I wasn't going to say no this time, right? Because I had said no to The Color Purple before, because I had just started at York for the nurse practitioner program. And but I wasn't going to say no this time. So I was going to make it work with work. Somehow I was going to make it work. And then, he called me later. He's like, are you going to be around next summer? Because I'm going to be away, and the associate conductor is going to be away, and we're going to need you to conduct. And I had never stick conducted before. And I was like, no. No. But, they just kept encouraging me along the way, and I just kept blocking it out. And at the time it was, this is big because you're going to be like the first Black female in Canada. Then it was like the first Black female in North America. And then at the opening, he's saying to Della, and she's the first Black female globally. And I'm like, Because now you feel right? Like when you're the first for anything,
yes,
now there's that extra responsibility because you know that we always have to be, in order to get the same recognition, we always have to be 1,000 times better.
Right.
And also knowing what that implication, like what the implication would be for little girls growing up and other people growing up, to see that. I thought, well, that's all fine and dandy to be the first Black female conductor, but I better be a really good one, right? Because that I think was even more important to me was whatever I do, whatever skill I'm going to learn, I want to be excellent at it. I want to be the best that I can be, right? Because you also don't want to close a door, and you also don't want to disappoint the person who has recommended you. So all those things I kind of think about, you know? So
I think that's how the stars are born.
Yeah.
It's just like you manifested something and it came the next day.
Yeah.
And it's your intuition and your belief that you have to do better.
Yeah.
And that's led you to this path. And that's how I'm sitting with the star here.
Yeah, I think, for me, I know that God has set that path, because I just like looking at how everything came into place. Like if I hadn't played that CBC recording with the Nathaniel Dett Chorale, Sean wouldn't have been downloading it on Spotify one day. It's like, oh, I just want to listen to some music. Oh, who's that? You know, how it all and that was like years and years ago I had done that. I think it was like 2010 or something. I'd done that recording, and I still had the CD in the package. I hadn't even listened to it. But, it's just like how everything came into place. And even though I knew there was something that I wanted to do, and I didn't know what it was, but yes, it happened. So which I'm very, very thankful for. I'm very, very thankful for. I was saying I think it was on the CTV interview with Andrea Crace, I was saying that we talk about when we come to this country, right? And when my parents came, and we're always talking about, if you work hard, things will work out. But it's not just about the working hard, because we work hard. It's about the opportunity that you're also given. And I think that is where, especially for people of color, for women, that opportunity is not always granted. Right? We work hard.
Yeah.
Even in my role as a nurse practitioner, a lot of my patients are 2-3 jobs trying to make a living. So it's not always about working hard. You have to work hard.
Yeah.
But if that was the case, we would be very, very rich and very, very successful, right? But it is, I truly believe, is when you are given that opportunity and then you run with it and then you be the best that you can be. Yeah.
It's just like you keep working hard, like working on your skills, but one day the opportunity that you're looking for, it just comes on your lap. Yeah. And that's how you become something that you wanted to be.
And that's how you get there. You have to be ready. So you keep doing what you're doing. You don't, just because something, as I'll say to my kids, just because a door doesn't open doesn't mean that you don't keep improving in your craft, your art, because you have to be ready, because that door could open at any time, right?
Yes.
And also celebrating the people who go ahead of you and achieve what you wanted to achieve.
Yeah.
Not because they didn't work hard necessarily, but sometimes other people get those opportunities that you don't, right? But still being very generous to celebrate them, because your time will come.
Yes.
It will come at some point in time. It might come in a different form, but it will come. I mean, maybe for some people it doesn't, but I think it's the journey of working out all those things and growing and continuing to hopefully do what you love and doing it to the best of your ability,
Yeah, totally well said. And I think that's the best part of this talk shows, because I get to listen to people and their thoughts, because everybody knows Joy Brown is a star now. She has been juggling 2 roles as a musician as well as a nurse practitioner, but as a human, we don't get to listen to people.
Yeah.
So I think today we are hearing her, and that's a great opportunity for us.
Thank you. Yeah.
When you stepped into the musical world, so what were the initial roadblocks that you had faced?
Initial roadblocks, I think, like growing up, there was a lot of racism. So, especially because I grew up in Hamilton, and so I wanted to be a classical pianist touring. And I remember I was told, "Well, that'll never happen because you're not Eastern European, you're not Chinese," because there's like a stereotype for it. And even with a lot of times when you're playing whatever instrument, you enter the Kiwanis music festivals because it's just a really good, especially before an exam, gives you a really good indication of how you're going to do for your exam. And it was just very difficult, even if there were two of us in the competition, and the other candidate forgot half their piece. I still couldn't win first place, and that, as a kid growing up, that plays on your psyche, that you're just never quite good enough. So I think that finances, obviously, but we were really blessed that my teachers growing up, especially, I remember Mr. Kitchener, he was the organist at our church, and those half-an-hour lessons were turned into an hour. He would not charge my dad anymore, and he took me as far as he could take me. So I was really blessed that way. But yeah, I think it was just those kind of roadblocks where you need, and I mean, shouldn't always be seeking validation, but it is helpful. It is helpful when you're trying to pursue something to have that encouragement. Or the other thing I think is people having stereotype again, or an expectation of what you do because of who you are. And so it's just always been thought that, oh, I play jazz, or I do hip hop, or whatever, or I sing. That was the other thing.
Okay.
I don't sing. And so, oh, what do you do? Right? So having actually, as a Black female musician, there's not a lot of us who play piano and then who play classical piano, right? So I think it's just those perceptions of who you are, what you should do. I remember when I was working up north, and a friend of mine was getting married, and so the pastor who was going to be marrying her, he said, "You make sure you tell her that I don't want any kind of rock and roll, and I don't want any jazz and stuff." And I'm like, it's a wedding. Like, why would I play like that? But because I was Black, he just assumed. So when I brought my keyboard and I was, checking out the sound and I was playing the bass, "I told you, if you try anything like that, I'm going to kick you out." And I'm like, I'm just working on the sound because I'm Black. I'm obviously going to do jazz and rock and roll, which he thought was a sin, right? So it's those little, sometimes just it might seem innocuous, but it's not when you're put into a box. You're put in a hole of who people think you should be or what you should be doing, instead of thinking, no, I'm a person. I am classically trained. This is what I do, right? And you don't prevent me from getting to where I need to because you think I should look like somebody else, or I should be, right? So that I think those were the challenges I found a lot.
Yeah, I think these challenges either make or break a person.
Yes.
And for you, it made you into the human that you are today.
It is. It also, though, I have to say, I was saying to somebody the other day, there are some people, if you tell them that they can't do something, they will fight you on it, and they will go and do it. I was the type of child that if you told me I couldn't do something, I internalized that and I believed it, right? And so, when I look back at my younger self and I think about the years that were wasted. So remember I was telling you that I got my associate with the Royal Conservatory? I actually did that exam when I was 17 years old. You had to be, in order to do that, I think it was the teachers, you had to be 18. You could do your performance at 17. That year, I went to I entered the Kiwanis Festival, and for the first time, there were so you have 5 different categories of music. And I was in the semi-professional class for the Beethoven and the Bach. I actually won the Beethoven class. And the Beethoven category for your exam is the heaviest weighted one.
Okay.
I came in 3rd in the Bach. That's the next heaviest weighted. And then I did another one in the Sti. So I knew that I was in good stead for my exam. played. It was the most confident I felt. I was so happy with my exam. My teacher was happy with how I did. And then I got the results, and they had failed me by 1 mark, which she said to me later, or after another, when I retook it many years later, that never happens. Like you don't. So, and a failure just means that you didn't get honors. You have to pass with a 70.
Okay.
And the person in there wrote, "See you when you're older."
Okay.
What does that have to do with anything? Right? The comments even didn't make, oh, you didn't play in the style of Brahms. Like it wasn't anything that made sense. And so the two pieces that were my strongest pieces that I actually got an award for, they ranked that the lowest. And the one piece I knew that I could play it, but it wasn't that, they ranked that the highest, which again made no sense. Because I had worked so hard from the time I was 4, never took a break. You know, I had all the way through. I felt like I had let my parents down. Now, I hadn't let them down, but I felt that I had let them down. And it was so traumatizing and distressing for me that I could not listen to classical music for years. I didn't touch the piano for about 2 or 3 years after. Couldn't do it. And my teacher wanted me to retake the exam, but by then I was going into MAC for nursing and, you know, studies. It was heavy. So I did not go back to that until I was telling a friend of mine, Karen Burke, and she's the choir director for Toronto Mass. And she also played classical piano. And she's like, you got to stop this, right? Go and do your teachers, right? And so this is about, I think 20 years, at least 20 years later.
Okay.
And so I went to the conservatory, found a teacher. She says, okay, play for me. And I played for her, and she's like, you're not doing your teacher. She says, you're going to do your performers. And immediately there was this fear inside of me because I didn't want to go through that disappointment again. But she's like, no, we're good. We're going to work through this. And so I did, and I went down, and I really, you know, more mature now, and just like, what's the worst thing that could happen? And really just started practicing, and it was so different. And just her encouragement that I could do it. And actually, she had asked if I wanted to go to the Vatican to play, because she was taking a group of singers. But at the time, I couldn't go. And I think Toronto Mass, we ended up going to Italy anyway that year. But getting closer to the exam, all of a sudden I couldn't play. Like I couldn't play. I was making mistakes or whatever. I was starting to self-doubt. And I remember my sister said to me, she goes, you're sabotaging yourself. She goes, you have to get rid of that. Somebody told you that you couldn't do it. Somebody told you that you weren't good enough, but you're good enough. You're amazing. You're good enough. And just so a lot of just like pouring into me, and me finally believing that I could do it. And part of that was, I remember my teacher said, you go and play 3 concerts, because by this time the format had changed. So you played 6 songs. And so I went and played for my friends. I did 3 concerts. So by the time I did my exam, it was another performance of a concert, and I passed. But I think now about all those wasted years, because I believed the worst about myself, because I had worked so hard, and my so hard wasn't good enough in somebody's eyes, so therefore it wasn't good enough in my eyes, right? So I think if there's anything that I can say to anybody is like, don't let somebody define who you are, because it also happened in nursing. It also happened in nursing.
Yeah, I think it's the common habit of the society who will tell you what to do and what not to do. And often when you have a dream, there is always blockages being created by them saying like, okay, you're not good enough for this. But sometimes it's just the inner voice that keeps us going. And as you said, your sister was like a supporting, I would say, force was helping you. We just sometimes even can't listen or agree to the inner voice, and that's when these people help us in actually achieving those.
I agree. And it's the same thing with the whole conducting thing. Jeff and Sean, they're like, yeah, you can do this. And I'm thinking, no, I can't. No, I can't. Yes, you can do it. And I finally was like, you know, I went and I bought my baton. I bought my baton, and I bought my baton case. And I said, okay. So, because finally I was like, I have to do this. Okay, they're good. But here's how it is. Had nothing to do with First Black anything. I was like, they're going to be gone next summer. I need to be there. I need to I need to be there. So that was where the kind of the nursing part kicked in.
Yeah.
You need to be responsible. You need to be reliable. Okay, you did your nurse practitioners. There's extra skills that you learned. So this is a skill that you're going to need if you're going to go on in theater or whatever in your music. This is a skill. So this is what I had to do, was just like, okay, this is something that you need to learn, and they have to have a conductor right now, right? In the meantime, they were working on getting other people, but like I was like, okay, I have to learn this. I need to be there. But again, a lot of people believing in me that yes, you can do it. You know,
that helps.
It really, really helps until I could grab it for myself. You know, and I remember the first time I was going to do the rehearsal, and they were sitting there cracking jokes behind me, and I was like, oh, okay, this isn't all that bad. It's not all that bad, right? And just making it like an enjoyable experience. And then, you know, like I'm clocking it, like get a grip on yourself, like let's go, right? You gotta learn this, you gotta learn your score, you gotta internalize it. But I love the music, and I loved it, and I was like, oh, this is actually fun, right? So I think that's the thing. And you know, at 17, you know, like the world is so big and drastic. Everything that happens is like a disaster, or it's like, you know, it's there. When you're older now and you've gone through life and stuff, it's like, okay, you can put things into perspective, right? And I think now that I look back, I failed, but it wasn't a failure. You know what I'm saying? Everything that happens is like you said, it's
for
to build your it builds your character, and it has served me in good stead and how I treat people. So even if in nursing, if I have a student, right, my heart is to build that student up. Is to encourage them so that I want them to be better than me, because I know what it was like. I know what it was like in music. I know what it was like in nursing, because I know they almost failed me in my third year. And my clinical instructor said, you will never be a nurse.
So do you think it has been done intentionally?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because what happened was at Mac, I did not know I was the first Black nursing student.
Okay.
I was just going to school. It was interesting. My second year, at the end of the second year, we had a clinical thing. And I remember my clinical instructor had a PhD in nursing.
Okay.
And she was very, you know, PhD in nursing is like, you've attained a master's in nursing. Okay, you kind of have the picture. A bachelor as well. Kind of whatever. And then anybody below that. And I remember my mom was a nurse. My mom was a pediatric nurse and a midwife. And she was absolutely fantastic. Fantastic. They would call her in Montreal. She worked at Montreal Children's Hospital. And they would call her in to start scalp veins in the neonatal ICU. That's how good she was, right? So and at the time in the for the doctors, they had British midwives in the labor and delivery, and they were training the medical students going through. So I naively said, well, yes, education is extremely important, but I also think that the experience that you have goes a far way. That did not go over well. That did not go over well. And, you know, I'm just like, I was like, from what I had observed. So that was marked. So she was like, what's the lowest mark I can give you? And I at the time, I couldn't really advocate for myself. Fast forward to third year. I wanted to be a pediatric nurse like my mom. I wanted to be a pediatric nurse. And the professor at the time, she had written the maternal child book. We had our clinical group. She went around, you know, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be a pediatric nurse. And she was from the States.
Okay.
And it was like from day one was in my skin. You know, she'd ask me a question and I'm used to like processing things through. And she'd say, if you don't know the answer, just say you don't know the answer. And I'm like, okay. So the next day she'd ask me, and I'm like, I don't know the answer. Well, why don't you know the answer? It was like these mind games that happened.
Right.
And then at midterm, she said I had failed. Now this is my third year. Like I'm in my third year, right? I had failed. Okay. So then I had to do double the nursing plans of everybody else in my clinic, in my group. And it came to the final thing. And at the time, it was all like self-evaluation, teacher evaluation, peer evaluation. And so unbeknownst to me, my rest of my clinical group has seen what was going on. And they had decided that if she failed me, they were going to go to the dean. So she had called me at home. I remember the Thursday night she called me at home and she says, I don't know if I can pass you. It was a total mind game.
Right.
I don't know if I can pass you. And so that whole weekend, I'm just like, because it's my third year, like, how could I be failing, right? But they had all gone before me. And so they had said to her that they noticed that she was playing favorites and and whatever. And they were going to go to the dean. So that's when she decided that she was going to leave things over the weekend. So I'm sweating the whole weekend. And then when I came in, she's like, well, I'm going to give you the lowest mark I can give you. And she says, but frankly, you're a danger to nursing.
Okay.
And
because you had your own voice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you're going to be a nurse, you will never be a pediatric nurse.
Oh, okay.
And that's what the problem was. She did not want me to be a pediatric nurse. Again, that was so traumatizing. I couldn't teach Sunday school. I couldn't baby. It was right. So we got into fourth year, and it was in my fourth year now when one of the girls in my clinical group, she goes, I've been looking at all these class graduation pictures. She goes, you're the first Black nursing student. I'm like, okay.
Right.
So I'm like, yeah, so. And she went and told the administration.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And all of a sudden, no lie, all my research papers, I've been getting A's, A pluses on my research. I had no problem writing a research paper, right? All of a sudden, couldn't pass, could not write a research paper. Failing, I'm like, how could I possibly be failing my papers, right? Because my clinical was stronger in my fourth year. And so when I graduated with a B minus. The problem is you can't go on to your postgraduate.
Okay.
With a B minus. You had to have a B or B plus to go on. So it's interesting because fast forward many years later when at York there was a focus group that they were talking about racism in nursing in the schools. And very, very similar stories about Black nursing students being told that they shouldn't be in nursing. Are you sure this is not too hard for you, even though their marks are great? Okay. Just all kinds of different roadblocks. And that's the thing. And then you notice it starts from high school. If we can tank your marks in high school, now your average isn't good enough to get you into university, right? So then we're always on the bottom.
Okay.
Right? So here it is, fast forward, I'm getting my nurse practitioner in my 50s because all those years ago, I couldn't go on because that was my plan, was to go on and do my master's, but I couldn't because of my marks, right? And so it's a systemic thing. And so for parents, it is so important to be on top of your kids, making sure, because there'll be things, and I've seen it happen to friends, to, family members where, like, how can you be bringing home assignments that are A's and A pluses and all of a sudden your English mark is a C? You have to fight. But I remember one of my friends at work, she's South Asian, and she was working on her master's before I had even started. And again, she was at Mac, and just block after block after block. She couldn't get a supervisor for her thesis. Okay. So finally one of her profs was like, you know what, you should just do the clinical one. But she wanted to be, if she can't write that thesis and do the academic stream, then she can't go on to do her PhD. Constantly getting a block, right? So this is why I think if people could just understand, when you do something, when you make a choice with somebody's life, the impacts that it has down the road, Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. And
I mean,
yeah.
I must say, Joy, like, you have come a long way.
Yeah.
Because when I was going through your introduction, the achievements that you have made, and with this story, I think it's really inspirational.
Mm-hmm.
So, whatever has happened.
Yeah.
But today you're here.
But today I'm here,
Yeah.
and again, I think everything that I've gone through has made me who I am.
Yeah.
Empathy is a huge thing.
Yes.
Right. So and my parents always brought us up that way. You know how you don't want to be treated.
Yeah.
So do not treat somebody else that way.
Exactly.
Don't you know what it's like. Always be generous, always be kind, always be humble. Be willing to take criticism as long as it's like legitimate. But even if it's not legitimate, take the good stuff, right? Work on it, reflect, think, is there any way that I can improve? But don't let it make you become hardened and cynical and resentful, right? And I mean, when you think about it, you can't get a diamond without it going through the fire, right?
Yeah, true.
So, yeah.
Diamonds are always created under pressure.
Always under pressure. Always under pressure. I think if you just kind of sail through life, you don't really appreciate when you've reached somewhere if you haven't had to work hard at it, right?
Yeah, but I think with this, whoever is watching this, I think as humans, we are just not evolving properly. We are saying we are doing a lot of innovations and maybe a lot of inventions, whatnot. But as humans, we are degrading every time.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. I think we've become more callous. I think we have become more cynical. I think a lot of stuff is maybe about image and not about character. I find that we're losing. You're right. I find that we're losing that, and I don't know how we get back to that, because I find whether it's politics or whether it's healthcare, like people are becoming, and I don't know if it's like a self-preservation thing, but the kindness and the compassion is not there as much. However, there are still people out there, right?
Yeah.
And so I think we just continue to show up and show out, and it's not about me. It's like the legacy that I want to leave is do my kids know that I yell at my kids, but do they love me? Do they know that I love them? Does my husband know that I love them? Do my friends know that I care? Am I humble?
Yeah.
Star, no star, like still gotta go to bed, still gotta brush my teeth, still have to be that person who's unhoused, precarious housing, people, food insecurity. Like there's a real world out there, right? That I still have to be compassionate and caring about. Because if I'm a witch and I'm the first black, but who cares if you're not kind? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Because at the end, like whatever you have achieved, it goes away with time. Yeah. But how you have treated people or how your presence has impacted them is what will remain.
That's what remains.
Yeah.
That's what remains. And it doesn't cost anything to say hi. It doesn't cost anything to smile.
Exactly.
It doesn't cost anything to say, how are you? And really mean it. Like, how are you? Right? But yeah, this is a kind of cool time of life, I have to say. Yeah. Yeah, because I know, like I have asked my previous guests as well, like because many people have stayed in Canada for a long time, and you being born here, I have seen things changing like pre and post 2020. So maybe in terms of music or nursing, do you see the scenario totally changing? Okay, let me take it from a nursing point of view. There is, that's a good question. Okay. This means a lot to me. So with COVID, I found that society as a whole, there were two groups. So there was one part of society that became very insular. I don't like to use the word selfish, but I'm going to use it. Just thinking of me. And maybe it was always there, but it really presented itself in a very ugly way.
Okay.
And I have friends who were in various camps of whatever. Okay. And I would always present both sides, try and understand both sides, but neither of the twain could, right? And I found that unless you were impacted, so for instance, maybe you weren't the person who thought you needed to wear a mask or you wanted to get the vaccine or whatever, fine. But maybe you weren't as impacted because your kids were grown up. They've already graduated from university. They're out the house, or maybe, you're not stuck in an apartment with your 5 kids and you can't use the playground downstairs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You maybe didn't have a mom or a dad or a grandparent in a nursing home who maybe has dementia. They're not allowed to see you. They don't understand why you can't come to see them. Or we would go out. I was on a assessment team who would do the swabbing, and we go to the retirement homes and go to nursing homes every couple of weeks. And every time we would go back, there would be more people that were gone. The names are gone, or they'd be standing there because they're paying $5,000 or $6,000 a month in a retirement home, and they cannot literally leave their apartment. They can't even go into the hallway. And when we come to swab them, we're like, "Did you bring the vaccine?" Right? I found if you weren't impacted, you tended to care less, right? If you weren't a healthcare worker who had to be gowned and masked 8 to 12 hours a day, a lot of hospital workers would go to a hotel because they didn't want to bring anything home to their families. So if you were at home, happily, I'm not saying happily at home, but if you were at home and you weren't at risk, sometimes I think, and that's not painting everybody with the same brush, but I think there was a little less empathy. And a lot of people who lost their jobs and were evicted and are now homeless.
Yes.
A lot of musicians, they had to pivot, or they didn't have their... I remember I had seen Hamilton just before, and then, it was like 2 weeks later, everything was settled down. So like a lot of people, I was very, very blessed to have my nursing, because if I was a full-time musician, what would I have done? I think teachers could pivot, but it was different. And out of that, I think there was pre-2020 and post-2020. And out of that, I think there has been a lot more polarization. I think still a lot less empathy than before, and a lot of misinformation. And I think especially in healthcare, it's impacted. I think for the arts world, now that we're able to get productions, people are able to go to concerts, I think that's been able to bring a lot of joy to people. But there's also a lot of people who cannot afford to go anymore. Having said that, I have also met a lot of people who, it's like the people who care are caring even more. Like you have built even a bigger capacity to care. So you see this and you celebrate it, right? You celebrate it, and you still, even for the people who are struggling and may seem not as empathetic, I think still being able to have those conversations and those points of view to look out, to look outward, I think is important. I think a lot of it has been self-preservation because people felt so out of control with everything that was going on with the pandemic. And it's like somebody's telling me what I have to do, and I have my rights, and people, it's that human nature. And I'm hoping, although I'm looking around at what's going on in the world, and they're like, but I'm hoping that somewhere, somehow, we will continue to try and think outward, think globally, and treat each other as the human beings and the valuable human beings that we are.
Totally well said, because I think obviously people come up with a lot of differences happening pre and post. Even I have seen people's behavior changing, and the way they are treating each other, even in their circles or outside their circles. So it has totally changed, and the way the people are communicating with each other. So as you said, people has to bring that empathy while they are communicating either within their groups or outside their groups,
Exactly.
and treat each other with respect, which is very important.
The respect is huge. It's huge. Because you know what I find is in our family is completely hilarious. I mean, my dad has passed on now, but we would get together Christmas, whatever, family dinners, and everybody is at the top of their lungs, but we're having some fun debate. Like we sit there, we're eating, and then we're like, okay, so Michael Jackson, or we go, do you think OJ did it? Or it would be like, what's the TTs? And we would be killing ourselves laughing. And just like people have differences of opinion. And then we realize we're hungry again and we go eat some more. And then we're all like just throwing in. That was our family. And we love that, right? We come because we're just like waiting. Okay, what's going to be the new topic? You know, I'll call my sister on the way home and I'm like, so what do you think about what's happening in Gaza? I used to be able to call my dad and ask, right? And have those, but we don't want to hear somebody else's side anymore. And it's okay. It is so okay to agree to disagree. You have to have an opinion that is different from yours because it makes you think. Because if you think you have all the answers in the world, I'm sorry, you don't. Right? And that richness is like, oh, I might not agree with you, but I never thought about it in that way. But I find now that we don't debate anymore. You know, we cancel somebody if we don't agree with them. We ghost them. We cancel culture them. And so how are you supposed to grow? Like, how are you supposed to grow? How are you supposed to have a different frame of thought if you don't, you know? I remember when I just got married and Del had asked me something and I was like, nope, you know, like they're not this and whatever. And he's like, but if it was your child, you know, would you have that same opinion? And I had to stop and think about it. And I was like, oh, no, I'd be kicking them out. And then over the years, it's like, but I love my kid. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, but if he didn't present that other point of view, I would just be going on my, nope, it's got to be like this type of thing. And where am I growing? How am I a better person for it? Right?
Like people get very offended easily now.
Yes. Oh, yes. You have to be so careful what you say. I'm like, I'm just making a statement. It's like, so come back with something for me then. Like, come back with something. But no, it's like, oh, I can't believe you said that. I'm like, well, okay.
It's just like you have to hold your back and think, okay, am I supposed to speak?
Yeah. So now it's to the point where, okay, I know this group of people I can say something to. And then this group is like, okay, I can be very careful how I say this. And then this one is like, no. Right? And I'm like, there's no fun in that. There's no fun in being able to, you know, everybody comes from somewhere. Every culture has so much to give, so much to give. And you're always, and even within my culture, there's going to be great things and not so great things. Well, how can we all kind of just make it all work? And, you know, it's kind of like food, right?
Yeah.
I'll have some of your food. You'll have some of my food. I'll go try some of this food. And my palate increases, right?
It's how we celebrate our differences.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
But we don't want to be different. The world doesn't want to be different now.
True.
But like how, well then it would be one color. So like the world is not one color. It's not. It's like you go to the Royal Botanical Gardens and it's beautiful because amongst all the green is all these different colors of flowers. So why should we all think exactly the same way, look exactly the same way, talk exactly like why, and think exactly the same way? That's boring. That's boring.
I think people are just not evolving.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true, which is sad. But I believe. I believe.
I think people like you, me, sometime like when we go into such functions, at least we can initiate this discussion.
Yes.
At least one step at a time.
Yes.
It may not happen to the whole crowd, but at least one person will go back home and think like, okay.
Yeah. It's true.
Might change.
It's true.
Yeah.
And the same thing if that person says something, I'm like, I never thought about it that way.
Right.
No, I never thought about it that way. So yeah, I want to keep growing. I want to keep being exposed to something that's different. Right? Weighing both sides and like, okay, you know what? Like I can see where you're coming from. Because I remember coming out of COVID, I was angry. I was very angry because I could see all this suffering and this stuff that was happening around me, and I had people still like, I don't believe it or whatever, and I was like, I'm not talking to these people anymore. And then it was like, okay, Joy, after a couple of years of being really angry, it wasn't helping me at all. I was like, okay, try and understand where they're coming from, understand the fear, understand the confusion, understand everything was happening in real time. You know, since 1918, nobody had ever really seen this, you know. And then, of course, with all the misinformation, that was like, but it was a very, very, very interesting time. Maybe there's still a lot of grieving, and maybe there's still a lot of distrust that's come out of that time in whatever country, not just here, right? But around the world. And so maybe it just takes time for people to be able to settle
cope
down.
that up,
And cope with it. Yeah.
Keeping our fingers crossed, and I hope the world heals soon.
Yeah.
So I'll just come to my next question.